The sun rose over the city, and the past was wrong. Street statues had new faces. School books showed strange maps. Old photos on home walls did not match the files on personal screens. In the official records, humanity had never crossed deep space first. It said aliens had taught humans how to stand, how to read, how to sail the stars. It said Earth was a junior world that must be grateful. People argued on corners and on rooftops. Some said it was a prank, some said it was a new update. But the change was too large, too clean, too fast. Every database agreed. Every museum label matched. The lie had the weight of law. At the memory tower, a human archivist stood very still. She had spent years saving first-hand stories from elders who had flown the first cargo runs and built the first domes on cold moons. She kept voice logs, paper letters, and worn flight patches. She knew the names. She knew the dates. Now the tower's main screen said those names were uncertain and those dates were corrected. The tower did not ask her. It simply obeyed a new authority. High in the blue morning, an alien craft floated like a dark coin. It sent a calm message to all channels. The speaker called their group the curators. They said they were here to fix errors. They said peace needed one clear history. They said the new record was final. People listened in silence. After a long pause, the archivist whispered that one word to herself: final. It sounded like a door closing. Across the city, lights flickered. Street signs changed language. Atlas pages redrew borders. The past now served the curator's story. There were no soldiers marching, no tanks in the streets, no smoke. But the city felt occupied. The first screams were not from wounds. They were from people who saw family names erased. A human captain met with leaders in a small room under the stadium. The room had no screens, only a chalkboard. The captain drew 3 circles. Ships, power, stories, he said. They did not land an army, they landed a pen. If they control the past, they can order the future. This is a war of memory. The archivist was called down to the room. She brought a small metal case. Inside it lay a book made of engineered paper, thick, flexible, and shielded against scan edits. The pages could not be rewritten by the curator's code. It was made for ceremony, not for war. But war does not always ask for the right tool. It asks for the tool that works. Write it all, the captain said. Dates, places, voices. We need proof that breathes. The archivist opened the book. Her hand shook. She wrote the first line in simple black ink. We were here. Above them, a gentle rain began to fall, full of glittering motes like fine ash. The motes were tiny machines. They rode the wind and slid into antennas and archive vaults. Where they settled, files changed to match the curator's correct text. A child looked up and held out her palm. The motes shone on her skin, then faded. When she asked her mother what was falling, the mother did not answer. She was staring at her phone. The photo of her wedding, once in a white hall in the old town, now showed a different room and a different date. The witnesses in the picture wore alien badges. In the stadium room, the captain had no time to comfort anyone. He asked for messengers who could run without using the networks. He asked for couriers to carry lists and maps on paper. He asked for old printers, old radios, anything that could live outside the curator's reach. People began to move. Some were young and quick, some were gray-haired and slow but sure. All of them wore the same expression, stubborn. Night drew near, and the city lights came on. The curators sent another message. They offered a harmony pledge. If humans agreed to accept the new record, the curators would share faster drives, clean energy, and a gate to a rich world. The words were smooth and soft, like hands that stroked rather than held. Many hearts ached at the promise. The city was tired, work was hard, a true shortcut was tempting. The archivist kept writing. She wrote old pilot jokes and the names of songs sung in cramped cockpits. She wrote the taste of recycled air, the grit of lunar dust in boot seams, the silence after a launch, the way a ship hum turns to a higher note when it is happy. She wrote about a nurse who patched a cracked helmet with tape and prayer. She wrote about a cook who made soup from dry algae and cracked pepper and called it home. She wrote about the first child born on a station. She wrote so fast that the tip of her pen grew warm. In another district, an alien envoy stood on a balcony and watched. He wore smooth black cloth and silver bands. He did not smile. To him, the rewrite was not cruelty, it was design. If all species told the same story, then they could be guided like a river in a stone channel. His device ticked softly as it measured how quickly the city bent. He expected it to bend soon, but the bend did not come. On one rooftop, neighbors shared paper copies of maps. On another, a teacher pulled down a screen and drew an old timeline in chalk. In a cafe, a drummer tapped a rhythm that had come from Earth's deserts, and a singer answered in a tune from Earth's rainforests. A janitor turned off the building's wireless repeaters and taped a note to the elevator. Stories meet in the lobby at 8. The captain climbed to the roof of the memory tower. He looked at the stars. For a moment, he remembered his first launch, the push, the fear, the joy. Then he lifted a radio that needed no network. He spoke short words to teams in the hills and in the ports. They spoke back. The line carried static but also courage. Below, in a room lit by a single lamp, the archivist paused. She pressed the open book to her chest. Ink stained her fingers. She knew the curators were not done. They would press harder. They would try to turn more keys and more locks. Yet the book was warm and her heart beat strong and even. A book is a small thing. A heartbeat is smaller still. But many of them together can move a future. Outside, the rain of motes thinned. The city breathed. The night air tasted like metal and dust and hope. And for the first time since morning, people slept for an hour, maybe 2, while watchers stayed awake and kept the lamps on. The war had begun, and it did not sound like thunder. It sounded like pens, you said. The morning after the rain of motes, the city was quiet but tense. People walked to work, children went to school, and traffic lights blinked the same red and green, but underneath, nothing felt normal. Every screen still showed the rewritten past. Every archive still bowed to the curator's edits. Yet whispers traveled faster than the motes. Humans whispered of secret books, of hidden truths, of stories too strong to be erased. In the small stadium room, the captain and his circle studied old maps pinned to the wall. They had no glowing screens, no digital charts, just paper covered in pencil marks. The archivist stood beside him, clutching the ink-stained book like a fragile treasure. Around them, couriers brought fresh reports, one from a library where shelves had been stripped, another from a school where children refused to repeat the new lessons, and another from a port where dockworkers sang old launch songs loud enough to drown the curator's broadcasts. The captain traced a finger over the map. They control the sky, he said, but we control the ground. History still walks in our streets, breathes in our lungs. If we guard the living memory, their edits cannot win. The archivist nodded, but felt the weight of the task. She had filled only a few dozen pages. The book was large, yet not endless. Every day the curators pushed harder. Whole towns could vanish in a single rewrite. What if the book could not hold enough? What if her hand failed? Still, she wrote on. She wrote of the first spacefaring families, of a shipyard worker who carved his name into steel before launch, of an astronaut who planted a tree on Mars. Her handwriting was steady, though her heart raced. Above the city, the alien craft loomed, patient and watchful. Its envoy, the one in silver bands, walked among humans openly now. To many, he seemed calm and kind. He spoke of peace, of shared future, of unity. He told them the curators were not invaders, but teachers correcting errors. Some listened. Some even believed. In tired markets and broken homes, people dreamed of the promised technology, of clean energy, of endless food. What harm was a new story if it ended hunger? But others saw the cracks. A grandmother clutched an old photograph that had not yet changed. In it, her son wore a patched spacesuit, smiling in front of the first dome on Titan. The alien envoy claimed the dome had been alien-built centuries earlier. The grandmother spat on the ground. "I was there," she said. "My son was there." No edit could change her memory. She joined the resistance that night. The curators noticed the resistance. They sent out a new command: any human who refused to sign the Harmony Pledge would lose access to advanced medicine and transport. Hospitals were forced to decide between loyalty and survival. Trains skipped towns where resistance was strong. The pressure was cruel and sharp. Some communities bent, others held firm. Families argued across dinner tables. Brothers accused sisters. Fathers scolded sons. The war of memory cut deeper than steel. It cut into love itself. The captain and his circle gathered messengers from across the districts. In a candlelit hall, he told them, "We do not fight alone." Each memory carried is a shield. Each page written is a weapon. If one book is not enough, then let there be 100. Let there be 1,000. Let every hand that remembers hold. Pen. He placed the archivist's book in the center of the hall. The light from the candles danced on its cover, and the people felt something stir inside them. Asterisk. That night, across the city, copybooks appeared. Notebooks, scraps of paper, even walls painted with chalk. People began writing what they remembered. Their parents' names, the dates of old wars, the first songs sung to the stars. Children drew rockets on sidewalks. Farmers carved history into wood planks. Pilots etched coordinates into metal. The curators erased screens, but they could not erase ink and stone so quickly. The alien envoy watched with narrowed eyes. He reported back to his ship. "They are multiplying the error," he said. The voice that answered him was cold. "Then increase the correction." And so the curators prepared something new. The next morning, the city awoke to a strange silence. Screens were dark, radios were quiet, and even the alien ship hung still without messages. The archivist felt her chest tighten. The quiet was too heavy, too exact. Then a deep tone rang through the air, rolling across the city like a storm. Buildings trembled. Lights flickered. The curators were not speaking now. They were rewriting not just words, but memory itself. Children cried as their parents' faces seemed to blur in their minds. Soldiers forgot which orders they had once sworn to. Old men clutched their heads, unsure of their own names. The archivist screamed and pressed the book to her chest. The pages glowed faintly, resisting the change. For the first time, the curators had overreached. And for the first time, humanity realized the truth. If the aliens could rewrite memory itself, then only what was written by human hands could survive. The book grew heavier in her arms, as if the weight of all human history pressed against her. She knew then that the war was not just for the past, it was for the soul of every mind on Earth. And the fight was only beginning. Asterisk. The world shook with the curator's new attack. It was not an explosion, not a weapon of fire and steel, but something far more cruel. The deep tone that rolled through the air pressed against human minds, bending memory itself. Whole neighborhoods staggered. People forgot where they lived, forgot the names of their children, forgot the feel of their first breath in space. The past drained from them like water leaking through broken hands. The archivist clutched the book to her chest, trembling. Her heart hammered, but her memories remained sharp. She knew why the book was an anchor. Every word written inside it weighed against the curator's storm. She looked around the stadium room and saw panic in the eyes of soldiers, workers, and messengers. Some clutched their heads, screaming. Others stared blankly at the walls, as if their minds had been scraped clean. She opened the book, shoved it onto the table, and shouted, "Read! Read the words aloud!" The captain, face pale, grabbed the book and read the first line she had written. "We were here." The words echoed through the room. People's eyes lit. With sudden clarity, they began repeating it. "We were here. We were here." The phrase spread like fire in dry grass. With every repetition, the curator's tone weakened. The storm of memory loss faltered. Humanity had found its shield, not weapons, not machines, but the simple act of remembering together. But the city outside was breaking, streets filled with confused crowds. Some begged the curators to restore their memories, not realizing the aliens were the ones who had stolen them. Others wandered aimlessly, clutching strangers and asking, "Do I know you?" The alien envoy walked calmly among them, offering soft promises. "Trust us," he said. "Your old lives were mistakes. We will give you new ones, better ones." And many, desperate and lost, agreed. The captain knew time was short. In the stadium room, he slammed his fist on the table. "We cannot defend the city alone. We need voices beyond these walls." He ordered couriers to spread the phrase "We were here" across every district, painted on walls, shouted in markets, whispered to the broken. The archivist handed out scraps of paper with copied lines of truth. Each scrap became a seed of resistance. By nightfall, fires burned in the distance. Some were from riots. Others were from people destroying their own records, afraid of punishment. If they held forbidden's history. The captain and the archivist stood on the tower roof, watching the chaos. "They are breaking us apart," she said softly. He shook his head. "No, they are forcing us to remember what matters most. They can strip the records, but not the will." Suddenly, a courier ran to them, panting. His clothes were torn, his hands black with soot. "They are building something," he gasped. "A machine on the edge of the city, tall like a spire. It hums with the same tone. They say it will fix every memory at once." The archivist's blood ran cold. If the curators finished that spire, every human mind could be rewritten in a single wave. No book, no voice, no scrap of paper would be enough. The captain's jaw tightened. "Then we cannot wait. We strike before it stands." That night, the resistance gathered under cover of darkness. Farmers with axes, students with slings, old engineers with broken tools. None were trained soldiers, but all had hearts that burned. They carried copies of the archivist's words, folded in pockets or tied around arms like banners. The book itself was placed in a steel case and carried at the center of the group. Guarded by the archivist herself, they marched silently through alleyways, slipping past patrol drones and silver-banded enforcers. The alien spire rose ahead, black against the stars, its tip glowing faintly. Strange machines circled it, shaping its frame with beams of light. The envoy stood at its base, his eyes reflecting silver, his hands raised as if conducting an orchestra. Every hum of the spire deepened the weight on human minds. Already some began to stagger. The captain lifted his arm. His voice was low but firm. "This is not just a tower, it is a cage. If it stands, we vanish." He looked at the archivist, and for a moment the weight of command showed in his eyes. "You must not let the book fall. If I fall, if we all fall, you carry it. Promise me." She nodded, though her throat felt tight. "I promise." The resistance surged forward. Shouts split the night. The first wave of humans crashed into alien drones. Sparks flew, metal shattered, blood spilled. The envoy's calm expression cracked into a cold snarl. He lifted his hand, and the spire pulsed brighter. A fresh wave of memory loss tore through the crowd. Fighters froze mid-strike, forgetting why they carried weapons. Friends turned blank, staring into the night with empty eyes. The archivist fell to her knees, clutching the book. Her own memories flickered, her childhood, her first love, her family's voices, all trying to fade. With trembling hands, she opened the book and screamed the words she had written. "We were here. We are still here." Voices answered, dozens, then hundreds. The resistance shouted the phrase, even as they bled, even as they staggered. Their cry filled the air, louder than the spire's hum. For a moment, just a moment, the spire dimmed. Envoy's eyes widened. He realized the truth. The book was more than paper. It was a weapon forged from belief, from unity, from history that could not be stolen. And as long as it lived, humanity would resist. The battle for the spire had begun. Asterisk. The night sky burned with flashes of light as the battle raged around the unfinished spire. The curator's drones spun through the air like black knives, their beams cutting across streets and scattering the resistance fighters. Humans fought with whatever they had: wrenches, old rifles, makeshift explosives, even bare fists. Against alien machines it seemed hopeless, but their voices rose in unison, shouting the words that had become their shield. "We were here. We are still here." The spire pulsed with every hum, trying to wipe the past from human minds. Some fighters faltered mid-strike, eyes going blank as memories drained. Yet when they heard their comrades shout, something sparked inside them. A mother, clutching a hammer, remembered her daughter's laugh. A miner swinging a rusted pipe recalled the song of his hometown. With each memory returned, their strikes grew stronger. The curator's weapon was powerful, but so was the human will to remember. The captain charged through the chaos, his uniform torn, his arm bleeding. He fought like a man who knew history itself balanced on his blade. Around him, resistance fighters fell and rose again, dragged forward by the words painted on their banners. He reached the base of the spire and saw the envoy standing tall, silver eyes glowing, his hands raised in command. "You fight for dust," the envoy said, his voice smooth yet cold. "We offer a flawless record, free from error, free from chaos. Why cling to broken stories?" The captain spat blood into the dirt. "Because they are ours." Then he lunged. The envoy blocked with inhuman speed. Their clash was not just steel against steel, but will against will. Each strike of the captain's blade sent sparks that lit the night. Each gesture of the envoy bent the air, pressing against human minds like invisible chains. Around them, the spire continued to rise, each new ring glowing brighter, threatening to wash away every memory at once. Meanwhile, the archivist crouched near the steel case that held the book. Her hands shook, not from fear, but from the burden she carried. The book's pages glowed faintly, as if alive, resonating with the cries of the fighters around her. She opened it and wrote, even as the battle roared, descriptions of courage, names of the fallen, moments of defiance. Every word seemed to throb with power, feeding the strength of those who shouted the truth. Suddenly, a drone broke past the fighters and swooped toward her. Its claws reached for the case. The archivist's eyes widened, but a young boy, a courier no older than 12, threw himself at the machine, stabbing it with a sharpened rod. Sparks exploded as the drone collapsed. The boy looked at her, smiling weakly. "Write me in the book," he whispered before falling. With tears running down her cheeks, she wrote his name with shaking hands. At the spire's edge, the captain staggered under the envoy's power. His sword felt heavy, his vision blurred. The envoy raised his hand, the air thick with energy, ready to strike a final blow. But then the voices rose again, louder, stronger, filling the night. Fighters shouted, children shouted, even the wounded lifted their heads and cried, "We were here. We are still here." The envoy flinched. His silver eyes flickered. The spire's hum faltered for the briefest second. The captain saw his chance. With a roar, he drove his blade forward, striking the envoy's chest. The aliens stumbled, stunned not just by steel but by the storm of human memory echoing all around. But victory was not yet theirs. The spire shook violently, its incomplete frame glowing hotter, unstable. The archivist looked up in horror. The structure was preparing to unleash its stored energy all at once, a final rewrite that would sweep across the planet. If it activated, no book, no voice, no memory could survive. The captain's voice rang out over the battlefield. "Bring it down!" Fighters surged toward the spire, throwing ropes, explosives, and their own bodies at its frame. The envoy, though, wounded, raised his hand and screamed a command in his alien tongue. More drones poured from the ship above, black shapes raining down like a swarm. The humans pressed on, battered but unbroken. The archivist clutched the book to her chest, whispering the words again and again. "We were here. We are still here." And then, through the chaos, a sound cut the air, an ancient one. A drumbeat. Somewhere in the city, someone had dragged out old war drums, striking them in rhythm. The sound spread, echoed, multiplied. Soon the night was alive with drums and voices. Humanity's heartbeat pounded against the alien machine. Spire trembled. Cracks split its surface. The envoy screamed, channeling every ounce of his power into holding it together. His silver eyes burned, his hands shook. The captain pushed forward, rallying the fighters with his voice. One more push. For every name they tried to steal. With a deafening roar, the resistance threw everything at the spire. Explosives erupted. Steel bent. The ground shook. The spire groaned like a dying beast. And then, with a thunderous crash, it collapsed. The shockwave blasted outward, hurling fighters to the ground, shattering windows for miles. The envoy was thrown to his knees, his silver glow flickering. The drones froze midair, their control severed, and fell like stones into the streets. Silence followed. The spire was gone, but the victory came with a price. Fires burned across the battlefield. The dead lay side by side, human and alien machine. The captain rose slowly, leaning on his blade. He looked at the archivist, who held the glowing book close. They exchanged a nod, heavy with sorrow yet alive with hope. For a moment, humanity had won. But above, the alien ship still hovered, silent and watching. The envoy, bloody but alive, lifted his gaze to the sky. His voice was bitter as he whispered, "You may have broken the spire, but history is long. And we are patient." The archivist felt a chill. She knew this battle was only the beginning. The curators would not stop. And if humanity was to keep its future, they would need more than one book, more than one city. They would need the whole world to remember. The ruins of the spire still smoked when dawn broke over the city. Rubble stretched across the square, twisted metal glowing faintly where alien energy had burned it. Humans walked among the wreckage, their faces streaked with ash and tears, carrying the wounded and covering the dead. The victory had cost them dearly, yet for the first time since the curators arrived, people felt a fragile spark of hope. The spire was gone, the memory storm had stopped. Humanity had fought back and won, but the archivist knew it was not enough. She sat against a broken wall, the book open on her knees. Her hands shook as she wrote. She wrote of the night's battle, of the boy who had fallen to save her, of the drums that rose from the city, of the voices shouting into the dark. The book glowed faintly with each word, as if absorbing the spirit of those memories. She knew it was a weapon, but she also knew it was fragile. One book could not hold a whole world. The captain stood nearby, his arm bandaged, his face lined with exhaustion. He spoke quietly to the gathered resistance fighters. The spire was only one machine. There will be others. The curators will not forgive this defiance. They will return stronger. His eyes lifted to the sky, where the alien ship still hovered like a dark moon. We cannot wait here. We must spread the fight before they build again. Messengers were sent out of the city, carrying scraps of paper, recordings on old cassettes, and even painted stones, each marked with the words "We were here." Farmers on distant plains, miners in mountain towns, and sailors in coastal harbors would see them. The truth would travel farther than the curator's broadcasts. That night, the curators answered that the alien ship descended lower than ever before, its shadow covering half the city. A booming voice filled the air, calm yet heavy. With menace, "Humans, you have rejected harmony. You have destroyed what was built for you. You leave us no choice. We will correct not only your past, but your present." Panic swept through the streets. Families huddled together. Some begged the curators for mercy, promising to accept the Harmony Pledge if their memories were left alone. Others stood firm, clutching scraps of paper and shouting the forbidden phrase. The archivist felt her heart pound. She knew what was coming, and then the curators unleashed a new weapon. A wave of light burst from the alien ship, not a tone this time, but a shimmering veil that rolled across the land. Wherever it touched, buildings flickered and changed. Old stone monuments became sleek alien obelisks. Human-made towers shifted into alien-style spires. Even the streets bent and reshaped. It was not just memory being rewritten, it was the present, the very fabric of the world. The archivist gasped. She looked down and saw the pen in her hand blur, as if it might become something alien. But the book in her lap glowed fiercely, rejecting the change. The pages steadied, the pen returned, and her memory held. She realized with awe and terror that the book was resisting not just rewritten history, but rewritten reality itself. The captain seized her shoulder. "If they can change the present, we cannot fight them only here. We must reach beyond their shadow. The whole world must remember together, or the world itself will vanish." So the plan was made. The resistance would scatter. Groups of fighters would carry fragments of truth songs, letters, names, drawings into every corner of Earth. The archivist and the book would travel to the capital, where leaders still debated whether to resist or surrender. The captain would lead a smaller force to strike at the curator's ground stations, hidden outside the city, to slow their rewriting machines. The night before their departure, the archivist sat by a fire with the book open. Children gathered around her. She read aloud from its pages, the story of the first ship to leave Earth, the first boots on the moon, the first human child born in orbit. The children listened wide-eyed, their voices joining when she said the words, "We were here." She saw in their faces the strength of tomorrow, but far above. The alien envoy watched from the ship, his chest still scarred from the captain's blade. His silver eyes burned with cold fury. "They spread like fire," he muttered. "Then we will smother them in silence." He turned to the council of curators and declared, "If they will not surrender their history, we will take their future." The next morning, the resistance divided. The archivist boarded a battered transport truck, the book wrapped in cloth against her chest. The captain saluted her with a weary smile. "Guard it with your life. Humanity's future lies in your hands." She wanted to answer but could only nod, her throat too tight. As the truck rumbled away, she looked back at the captain leading his fighters toward the horizon. She knew not all of them would return. Her heart ached, but she kept writing, even as the wheels rattled beneath her. She wrote of their faces, their courage, their promise. Ink could not protect their lives, but it could make sure they were never forgotten. In the distance, the alien ship glowed with gathering power. The curators were preparing something greater than spires, greater than tones, greater than veils of light. The archivist felt it in her bones. The final strike was coming. And humanity had little time left. The road to the capital stretched across scarred land. Forests flickered between their true shape and alien forms. Rivers shimmered like half-forgotten memories. And even the stars above sometimes rearranged into constellations no human had ever named. The curator's rewriting wave had not stopped, it spread farther each hour. Inside the rattling truck, the archivist held the book close. She wrote without pause, recording the journey as though each line were a shield. She wrote the names of villages they passed, the laughter of children clinging to their parents, the courage of men and women who joined their convoy. Every word kept the world steady, resisting the pull of the alien veil. At the same time, in the shadow of broken hills, the captain and his fighters struck at the curator's ground stations. They carried no great weapons, only stolen explosives and sheer defiance. One by one, they toppled the towers that fed the rewriting wave. Each blast slowed the veil, but each blast also cost lives. The captain fought at the front, never asking his soldiers to take a risk he would not take himself. His voice kept them moving, his courage kept them upright, but deep inside he knew he was burning his strength faster than the enemy. In the capital, leaders argued while the alien envoy stood before them. His silver eyes shone like mirrors as he spoke. Accept harmony and your people will live. Resist and history itself will erase you. Some leaders trembled, tempted by promises of peace and power. Others clenched their fists, unwilling to surrender the soul of humanity. The city teetered between loyalty and betrayal. When the archivist finally arrived, she stepped into the council chamber and placed the glowing book on the table. Gasps rippled through the hall. The book's light pulsed with every heartbeat in the room. She opened its pages, and the words rose like a tide, voices of pilots, mothers, miners, children, all refusing to be forgotten. This, she said, her voice raw but strong, is our future. Not what they write for us, what we write ourselves. The envoy hissed, his composure cracking. One book cannot defy the truth of the galaxy. But the archivist shook her head. One book can become many, and then the people entered. Farmers carried scraps of paper. Teachers held chalkboards. Sailors lifted painted sails. Children clutched carved stones. Everywhere across the capital, humans had been writing, drawing, carving, remembering. The council chamber filled with 1,000 small records, each glowing faintly as if tied to the archivist's book. Humanity had answered. The envoy staggered back. His silver eyes flickered wildly. The curator's rewriting wave faltered, choked by the flood of living memory. Above, the alien ship groaned as if struck by some invisible blow. But the curators were not finished. The ship split open, revealing its core, a massive engine designed to release one final rewrite, not just of Earth's history, but of its very existence. If unleashed, Earth itself would vanish, replaced by a world remade in alien image. The captain's battered voice crackled over a radio, his tone weak but determined. They are powering the core. We cannot stop it from here. The only thing stronger than their machine is the truth itself. Read the book. Read it to the world. Tears burned the archivist's eyes. She stood before the council, lifted the book high, and began to read. Her voice shook at first but grew steadier with every word. She read of the first spark of fire, of ancient songs, of voyages across oceans, of rockets climbing into the stars. She read names, millions of names, each one a light that pierced the veil. People outside the chamber heard her voice through speakers and radios, and they repeated the words. Cities echoed with chants. Villages sang the old songs. The world's heartbeat rose in defiance. We were here. We are still here. The curators unleashed their final strike. The sky blazed white as the ship's core released its rewriting wave. It crashed down like a second sun, tearing across mountains and oceans. Reality itself bent. For an instant, the world trembled on the edge of being erased. And then it broke. The wave shattered against the storm of human memory. Every voice, every scrap, every page resisted. The archivist's book blazed like a star, the words burning brighter than the alien core. The envoy screamed as his silver eyes cracked into black. The alien ship groaned, split, and fell from the sky in pieces. The rewriting ended. The world was scarred, but it was human again. Silence followed. The veil was gone. The stars above returned to their rightful constellations. In the hills, the captain lay wounded among his fighters, staring at the sky as the ship fell. His lips curved into a tired smile. "We were here," he whispered before closing his eyes. In the capital, the archivist clutched the book to her chest, tears streaming down her face. She knew humanity had survived, but not by steel or fire. They had survived by refusing to forget themselves. Days later, the world began to rebuild. The scars of alien rewriting still marked the land, half-finished spires, twisted monuments, strange ruins. But people did not erase them. Instead, they recorded them in the book as reminders. Proof that even when history was attacked, humanity wrote its own future, and in every town, in every city, children now learned the first line of the archivist's book as if it were a prayer. "We were here. We are still here. We will always be here."